I just ate chili cheese fries and had some ice cream as dessert. I'm in the right mood to do book ramblings now. Yep. Hey everyone, Fina here from Fina Reads. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. This time with the first wrap up of the year and the next TBR. I decided to combine those now since I'm currently on average only do one video per week. By the way, what is the best day for you? Currently, I'm publishing them on Sundays. Is there a day that works better for you? I'm curious. Let's start with some stats for January, which has been a really phenomenal first month of the year with potentially 2 favorites of the year already. And then I talk about the books that I read in the order I read them. And then we talk about February because there's a bunch of stuff coming up, including a Buddyread announcement. So I hope you are joining for those, for one of them at least. So let's go through stats. I read 6 books with a total of 3,333 pages. And this is not a joke. This is truly the amount of pages I read, which I think is amazing. Out of these 6 books, I had 4 male authors and 2 books were from the same female author. I read 1 book in German, which I'm really excited about. I definitely want to do more of that and read more books in my native language. 3 of those were adult books, 2 new adult books, and 1 middle grade. 3 were fantasy, 3 were sci-fi, 5 were physical books, 1 was a physical book audio mix, like I switched back and forth between the 2. And as you will see, they were all chunkers. I read 5 books that were part of a series. 1 series I started that I also finished in January, I'm really excited about. But I started a total of 3 series. I continued 1 series and I finished 1 series. Well, it's a duology actually. 1 of those books was a reread. And then lastly, 2 were traditionally published and 4 were self-published. So let's talk about that. So I started out the year, I actually moved into the year rather, with Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erikson. This is the German book I read. In German it's Die Gärten des Mondes. Gardens of the Moon is just 1 book. The rest of the series is split into 2 books. So where Malazan in English has 10 books, in German it's 19 books. Because after book 1, they split each one book into 2 in German. Mainly because German language is more voluminous. I actually don't mind it that they're splitting them. I know some people have issues with that in Germany, whatever. This was already one where I was incredibly excited about. This is an incredibly immersive world that Stephen Erikson starts to build here. And what a lot of people say is that it is really complicated and that there's a lot going on and, that you have to be patient, blah, blah, blah. And it sometimes has the feel of you have to be scared of reading it. And I was definitely one of those people that always thought like, oh my goodness, this is a complicated book. And, the reason why I bought this in German is like everybody kept saying how big it is and how complex it is and whatnot. And that's why I bought it in German. I thought it might be easier for me to read it. And I don't know if it was because I read it in German and not in English. I didn't think it was that complicated. How did I say this? It was not an easy read. Like, I agree on that. But I also don't think that you need to be scared about it. Yes, there are a lot of POVs. And yes, every chapter basically handles another storyline and introduces new characters, introduces a new part of the big picture story. But I think Stephen Erikson actually did it really well in the sense of, yeah, you have to get out of the, I need to understand everything the moment they say something, because that's not happening. But the way he tells the story and the part of the plot is actually, like, for me, it ended up being like always an aha moment and I was able to connect the dots. Not that I understood everything. I think there are still a bunch of open plots still left that I assume will be explored in the upcoming books. But generally, I had a feeling I understood what was going on and how the characters that are introduced kind of interact with each other, or how they relate to each other, or how their plot relates to each other, rather. I found it a very interesting way of telling the story. The magic system was fantastic. Like, those aspects were super intriguing for me, and I cannot wait to read more of that. There were like a lot of fascinating characters. I loved the background of the different fractions of the world. And yeah, I mean, it was just really impressive of how everything fit together really seamlessly, I have to say. If you have not read Gardens of the Moon, it definitely feels like a setup of something to come. It's I saw one reviewer saying that, you know, you have all this setup for then to end with a big garden party, and that's kind of really what it is. There is just, you know, getting to know the people, getting to know kind of like the bigger stakes. So we're, you know, in the middle of war or of conquering areas. There are two big fractions that are going each other. So one fraction is trying to conquer the area of the other fraction. There are some other parts of the world that are allying with the two main fraction that the story is about. And you get to know like the different pieces. You get POVs from all of these different sections and what their motivation is and why they're in the war and kind of that stuff. And then basically if you have all these people that are across the world and they're all moving closer together, and some know of each other based off of stories and the past, and some don't. They get to know each other. Like, it's really, really interesting, that whole interaction of all these characters and how things are moving together and how all of these plot points end up in that kind of big garden party. Yeah, it's definitely, it feels like a setup for that bigger story, which makes sense. It's book 1 in a 10-book series. It definitely leaves me with, I want more. I cannot wait to read more of this. And I will definitely continue with the series. And that is something that I'm actually hoping to get through at least a big chunk of it in this year. And I know there are various read-alongs happening. Some read, I think, 1 book a month. Was it the Rekindled Reader? Theo, I think, is reading 1 book over 2 months. I'll see, you know, what speed makes sense for me, because they're definitely not fast reads and you definitely want to spend a little bit time with that. But I find the story so incredibly rewarding. Like, your imagination goes on fire in this book. It was so much fun to explore everything, and I cannot wait to continue with that. The next book I read is Bloodlines by Peter Hordog. That was a space fic book that we had to read as part of the quarterfinalists. The announcement has already been made on who of our team's quarterfinalists moved into the semifinalists. I'll link that accordingly. I will have a separate review for that coming up either next Sunday or the Sunday after. I'm not sure. It's already filmed. I just haven't edited and uploaded it yet. So I'm not going to say too much about it, because, you know, you'll hear me babble about it in a separate review. What I can say about it, though, it's actually a mystery novel set in the future, and our main character, who's kind of one of those disgruntled older detective types, you know, you can imagine him with, instead of smoking, he's drinking a lot of coffee, but other than that, very similar to those typical detective novels. He is pulled into an investigation where a body was found that was completely drained out of blood and just had 2 puncture marks on the neck. So they're figuring out vampires? No vampires? What was it? And that's kind of what the book is about. Next up, I moved right into the next space fic book, which is Aestus Book 1, The City. I still am not 100% sure if I'm actually pronouncing the name of the book right, by S.Z. Atwell. This was the chunkiest book of them all from our quarterfinalists. And again, since the semifinalists have already been announced, this has been our top pick with the highest average rating. So this book is moving into the semifinals and will be now read by 2 different teams, actually. And this is a duology. So this is a series I started and a series I finished. I had to read book 2 immediately after, because there was quite a cliffhanger at the end of book 1. So I wanted to know how it continues, and I just continued with book 2. Same here. I'll have a separate review. This, like, Bloodlines and this are the 2 reviews I'm missing. So they will be next Sunday and the Sunday after. This is kind of a sci-fi, YA, new adultish romance novel where the focus is, well, I'm not really sure if the focus is the romance or the sci-fi story is the romance. They are both have really heavy elements. And what I like about it, while it is heavy on the romance, I find there's still enough like kind of sci-fi topics that you can dig your teeth in and really enjoy this. Super fast read, even though they are both really chunky and heavy. Super entertaining. the characters are fleshed out, the world is fleshed out, that whole setting, that futuristic dystopian set in the Middle East is really interesting. So there's so many elements that make this unique that I highly recommend reading this. To cut it off here, this was definitely a favorite. More detailed review to come. After this highly entertaining sci-fi romance, I started a denser book. The Two Towers by Tolkien, and that was my reread, well, at least partially, because I DNF'd this one before. And now I said, you know what, I want to read Tolkien end to end at least once. And I finished this book. I'm so proud of myself. I finished this on the last day of January, and you know, it's Tolkien. Everything has been said about Tolkien. I think everybody has an opinion on Tolkien. I fall into the bucket of, I find it impressive what he did, since it is a ginormous world, and I find it fascinating how much of a history language nerd he really is, and he really let this out in those stories. And yeah, that's all there's to say on my end. It's still dense. It's still boring at times. Like the fact that some scenes are written with, then they walk till the end of the day, and then the next day they walked further, and then they spent the night, one person slept really well, the other person kind of was tossing and turning, and then the next day they continued walking. Literally, this is a paragraph written like this. Well, in Tolkien words, not in my words, but I was like, come on, like you can write better, because he has parts in the book that are really interesting and written in a really satisfying manner. But then he has these scenes where you're just, and then the person did this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then they did this. Like, this is not storytelling. And then you have those info dumps in the dialogues where one side is telling you their entire history and where they're coming from, like thousands of years in the past and stuff like that. And you're like, boy, this is just a novelized history book that you put together here. So it has its moments where I'm really interested and that I read really, really fast because I wanted to know what it continues, especially like the section with the end. I love that part. And then there are sections where you're just sitting there like, okay, can we move forward? I just need to move forward. So it's unfortunately not very, for me at least, not a very consistent read. I am definitely going to continue. I want, like, this is an accomplishment for me right now that I've finished book 2, and I want to finish book 3 as well. I want to read it. I want to say, finally, after all these years, I did it. I finished Tolkien, and then I don't ever have to read it again, I don't think. I want to read some of his other stories, though, because, again, there are elements that I really like about the world, and there are elements that I really like about his writing, but I will not read The Hobbit. Not gonna happen. I will also not watch the movies. I have zero interest in that. But there are some other stories that I am actually really interested in reading that are part of this world, but not part of the immediate, like Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, not of this immediate storyline. And then the book that I read in between, because after, you know, very entertaining and fast-paced to that very dense, that was too much of a jump. So I picked up A.R. Witham's The Legend of Blackjack as just a spontaneous pickup. I actually had 2 other books on my TBR that I didn't get to and that I currently also put on the side because I'm kind of not really in the mood for both of them. So I picked up a random other book, and the reason why I picked this up is I'm currently participating in the Keymark Readathon, and the Keymark Discord, like A.R. Witham is basically kind of the owner of the whole thing. And I was like, you know, I'm on his Discord, I'm participating in the readathon, I kind of should read his book. Plus, he sent this to me as a review copy forever ago, and I just never got to it. Oops. So The Legend of Blackjack is also kind of a weird mix of, it has a very middle grade flair to it, but then it has some rather dark moments in there where I'm like, ooh, this is not middle grade at all. Like, there's a death of a parent, death of friends, and there's some, you know, scenes in there I'm like, I'm not sure I think this is middle grade. But the general kind of flair feeling of the book is more middle grade than YA or adult, which is not bad. It's just, you know, the writing style and the way the story is told. The Legend of Blackjack is about a young boy, Jack Swift, who lost his father during a really tragic accident when he was rather young, and he kind of blamed himself for that all his life. So it starts with that accident situation when he was pretty young, and then we'll see just a little bit, like really fast forward till his teenager time, brought up in various foster homes, kind of forwarded from foster home, till the night of his 14th birthday, when a creature kidnaps him and brings him to Keymark, which is a different world. And he all of a sudden has to help one of the people living in Keymark. One thing about Jack Swift to know is he has an eidetic memory. He memorizes everything, and he wants to become a doctor. So he reads medicine books like crazy. Anything that teaches him about medicine and surgeries and the human organs and, all that kind of stuff. So they picked him and said, like, hey, can you heal this person? And he is doing his very first surgery. And then kind of he is thrown from one adventure to the next. We meet all of the people that live in Keymark, and they are everything from samurai to lizard people to cat people to pirates, and it's a whole mix of actually fantasy inspirations, like Western, you have that in there, you have Japanese fantasy in there, Jewish elements in there. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and it's super fascinating how Air Witham kind of spun them together, and it worked out really, really well. I mean, it's a fun ride. It's a really fun story. Just keep in mind that it gets a bit darker at times and a bit more, descriptive. I'm not quite sure how to say that. I really had a lot of fun, and it was a good balance to the Two Towers and Lord of the Rings. I'm glad, this kind of worked out. That was my January, which means we are now jumping into February. And I want to start it off with, there are two buddy reads that I'm planning to do for February. Kind of unofficial. I'm not doing a big thingy around it because they're starting now, so it's a bit late for a lot of you guys. And I will leverage the Keymark Discord for that, since I've been now throughout January, I've been kind of doing a lot of stuff on the Keymark Discord, and I really, really enjoy the community there. If you want to join the Keymark Discord, I have the link down in the description below. And the only thing you have to do once you joined is go into the roles section and select the buddy read role. Then you'll see in the Discord all the, there's a buddy read section. And within there, in the buddy read section, you'll find two posts for two series that I want to read between February and April, because for both series in April, we will get book 3. And series number 1 is the Gunmetal Gods series by Samuel Akhtar. I want to read Gunmetal Gods in February, Conqueror's Blood in March, and then Elder Epoch in April. I'm super excited about that. And then the second buddy read that I'm opening up is the Drowning Empire series, book 1. The Boneshard Daughter is book 1 in February. Boneshard Emperor is book 2, that in March. And then it's Boneshard War is, I think, book 3 that is coming out in April, so we will read it in April. Those two buddy reads are set up on the Keymark Discord. If you're interested in joining, we already have a couple of people for both of these books. Just, hop on over to the Keymark Discord, sign up for the buddy read role in the roles channel, and then you'll see the channel and you can join us and share your thoughts with us. All right, so then, no surprise, I want to continue Malazan. So this is book 2.1. So Deadhouse Gate is book 2, and this is the first half of Deadhouse Gate. In German, it's Das Reich der Sieben Städte, the Empire of the Seven Cities. On top of that, I want to read 2 of the Spacefic semifinalist books. So we just got 6 new books assigned, and I want to make sure that I'm actually reading them on time. So I want to read 2 books every month, because I think we need to pick a finalist. We have to have the scores in by February, March, April, I think by the end of April. So yeah, 2 books a month for Spacefic. Another book that I have to get to is Ghostly Howls by Stephanie Hansen. That is an escapist book tour that I signed up for. It's a rather short book, and if I remember correctly, it's more urban fantasy. That's all I know. The other one that I hope I get to, because otherwise I'm worried that I will not get to it for a long, long time, is the Cosmere book, that special Kickstarter, Brandon Sanderson, Tress of the Emerald Sky. That book. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And this is going to be my first Sanderson. I have never read a Brandon Sanderson book. So I have no idea if I'm creating a whole ginormous problem for me, because I know it's part of the Cosmere, but I don't even know what the Cosmere is. So we'll see. And then the other one is, amidst the whole fantasy and sci-fi, maybe reading a different genre. there is the book, The Plot. I'm blanking on the author name right now. Here's the cover. The Plot, that I want to read as part of the Bookish Drummers, Jake's year-long book club type of thing. I'll put the video down below. He announced that a couple of days ago that he wants to read one specific book every month for the, you know, February till December, and they're all kind of thriller mystery type books. And The Plot actually sounds really interesting. It's about an author that stole the plot from one of his students, if I remember correctly. He thinks that plot is amazing, so he's kind of stealing that and becoming really successful with that. And it would be fun to read that with a couple of other people. And then, you know, potentially, probably not this month. I probably will do it in March, but I want to keep it on the list, so I'm not letting it slip, is book 3, or the third part of Lord of the Rings, is The Return of the King. As I said, I want to finish the series. I want to feel this accomplishment of having read the series and having it finished after years and years and years. I think I was maybe in my early 20s when I first attempted it. So it has been a while. I want to say I've read it. I want to, you know, put my checkbox next to it and move on. But this is a total maybe. So I have no idea if I will actually get to it, given, as I said, all the chunkers that I already have, all this blah, 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 blah. That's quite the plan. I think February is covered. What are you reading in February? What's your plan? Any cool books that you're reading? Are you interested in joining any of the 2 buddy reads? I would love for you to join. Like, I think the more the merrier, and especially because they are so interesting books. There's a lot of material to just talk about. So I think those are great for discussions and for buddy reads and just talking about things, you know, and exploring them together, basically. And with that, let the rambling end. You guys, thank you so much for stopping by. And with that, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And then I'll see you soon with my next video. Bye!